The great hall of Waypoint Terminus was filled with fear. Ambassador Yanala could smell it on every species present. The Velith, her own people, stood tall on their slender legs, their feathered crests flat against their skulls in distress. The quorum huddled in their floating chairs, their ancient faces wrinkled with worry. Even the mighty Torak, those great bear-like creatures who feared nothing, shifted nervously on their feet. The holographic display in the center of the room showed the terrible truth. Red dots covered the map like a disease spreading across healthy flesh. Each dot was a hegemony fleet. Each fleet contained thousands of warships, and they were all moving toward accord space. "We cannot win this war," said High Commander Vorath of the Torak. His deep voice echoed through the silent hall. "The Kethra outnumber us 10-1. Their ships are built for war. Ours are built for trade and exploration. We must consider surrender." The word hung in the air like poison. Yanala closed her large golden eyes. She thought of her homeworld, Velith Prime. She thought of the crystal forests where she had played as a child. She thought of her daughter, barely 20 cycles old, who had never known war. Would the hegemony spare them? She knew the answer. The Kethra did not spare anyone. They conquered, they enslaved, they consumed. "There must be another way," she said softly. "There is no other way," Vorath replied. "We have sent requests for help to every known species. None will stand against the hegemony. We are alone." A thin voice spoke from the back of the hall. Perhaps not entirely alone. Everyone turned to look. An elderly quorum floated forward in his chair. His skin was pale and spotted with age. His eyes, however, were sharp and bright. Yanala recognized him. Historian Malthan, keeper of the ancient records. "What do you mean, old one?" Vorath asked impatiently. Malthan smiled, showing his few remaining teeth. "I mean that there may be allies we have forgotten. Or rather, allies we have chosen to believe never existed." He waved his thin hand, and a new holographic display appeared. It showed a star map, but not a modern one. This map was old, very old. The edges were damaged and the coordinates used a system that no one had used for thousands of years. 3,000 years ago, before the Great Silence, our ancestors knew of a species, Malthan said. They came from a small blue world in a distant sector, a world they called Earth. Several diplomats laughed. Yanala saw the Torak commander roll his eyes. "Fairy tales," Vorath said. "Children's stories. The humans are a myth, Malthan. A legend invented to frighten young ones into behaving." "Are they?" Malthan asked quietly. He waved his hand again, and text appeared on the display. Ancient text, written in a language that had not been spoken for millennia. "These are records from the old empire, not stories. Records. Official documents." Yanala leaned forward. She could not read the ancient language, but she could see the official seals. These were real government documents. The humans were what we call Deathworlders. Malthan continued. They evolved on a planet that should have killed them 1,000 times over. Their world had extreme temperatures, constant natural disasters, and predators everywhere. Yet they survived. More than survived. They thrived. "Impossible," someone muttered. "They were persistence predators," Malthan said, ignoring the interruption. "They hunted by following their prey for days without rest, until the prey simply collapsed from exhaustion. They could survive injuries that would kill any other species. They could eat foods that were poisonous to others. They could adapt to any environment." The hall was quiet now. Even Vorath was listening. "But that was not what made them truly remarkable," Malthan said. His voice dropped low. "What made them remarkable was their capacity for bonding. They formed emotional attachments to everything. Their own kind, other species, even animals that could kill them. They kept predators in their homes as companions. They would die for strangers. They would fight to the death to protect the weak." "Why have we never heard of them?" Yanala asked. "Because they vanished during the Great Silence," Malthan said. 3,000 years ago, a great catastrophe struck the galaxy. Many species died. Many records were lost. When our ancestors emerged from the darkness, the humans were gone. Their sector of space was quarantined. It became what we now call the dead zone. Yanala felt something stir in her chest. Hope. A tiny spark of hope. "The dead zone," she said. "The region that no ship can enter because of the interference readings?" "Yes," Malthan said. But I have always wondered, what if that interference is not natural? What if it is artificial? What if someone is hiding in there? The hall erupted in arguments. Some called Malthan a fool. Others demanded to know why this information had been hidden. Vorath shouted for order, but Yanala was not listening. She was looking at the star map. The dead zone was far away, yes, but not impossibly far. A fast scout ship could reach it in a few weeks. After the meeting ended in chaos, she found Captain Sorith waiting for her. He was young for a Veleth, his feathers still bright blue with youth, but he was also the best pilot in the fleet. "You want to go there," he said. It was not a question. "I do," Yanala admitted. "It is probably foolish. The humans are probably dead. The dead zone is probably just empty space filled with radiation. But if there is even a small chance, then we must take it," Sorith finished. "I will prepare my ship. We leave tonight." Yanala touched his wing gently. "The Council did not authorize this mission. If you are caught, you will face punishment." Sorith's crest rose proudly. "If we do nothing, my people will face extinction. I would rather be punished for trying to save them than be praised for watching them die." 3 hours later, a small scout ship slipped away from Waypoint Terminus. It carried a crew of 5 brave souls who believed in fairy tales. 2 weeks later, they crossed into the dead zone. The interference hit them immediately. Their instruments went crazy. Their navigation systems failed. They flew blind through empty space, guided only by the ancient star map that Malthan had given them. And then the tractor beam caught them. Sorith fought to break free, but it was useless. Something was pulling them forward, toward a massive structure that appeared on their view screen. A space station, a station bigger than anything they had ever seen. A voice crackled through their communication system. It spoke in a language they did not understand at first. Then it switched to accented Galactic Common. "Unidentified vessel. This is Earth Defense Perimeter Station 7. State your intentions." Soreth's feathers went pale. He turned to look at Yanala. His eyes were wide with shock and wonder. "They are real," he whispered. "The humans are real." Yanala stepped forward to the communication panel. Her heart was beating so fast she thought it might burst from her chest. She had come here hoping to find a myth. Instead, she had found something far more terrifying and wonderful. She had found humanity. The tractor beam pulled their small ship into a docking bay that could have held 100 vessels their size. Captain Sorith watched through the view screen as massive doors closed behind them. The metal was thick, thicker than anything he had ever seen on a spacecraft. Everything about this station was built heavy, built strong, built to survive punishment that would destroy normal ships. The 5 Veleth crew members gathered near the airlock. They did not know what to expect. The ancient records said humans were friendly, but the ancient records also said humans were predators. Sorith kept his hand near his sidearm, though he doubted it would help if these creatures decided to attack. The airlock opened with a soft hiss. Humans stood on the other side. Sorith had seen images from the old records. He thought he was prepared. He was wrong. Seeing humans in person was completely different. They were smaller than he expected, shorter than Veleth. Their skin was smooth and soft, without scales or feathers or fur. They had forward-facing eyes like all predators, and when one of them smiled in greeting, Sorith saw teeth, not the flat teeth of plant eaters, sharp teeth, predator teeth. "Welcome to Station 7, said the human in front. She was female, Sorith guessed, though he was not certain. She had dark hair pulled back from her face and eyes the color of deep space. "I am Commander Lisa Chen. You are the first visitors we have had in 3,000 years. I hope you will forgive us if our hospitality is a little rusty." She smiled again when she said this. Sorith realized she was making a joke. He tried to relax. These humans did not seem hostile. Curious, yes. Cautious, certainly, but not hostile. "I am Captain Sorith of the Veleth Accord," he said. "This is Ambassador Yanala. We have come seeking help." Chen's smile faded. Her expression became serious. "Help? What kind of help?" Yanala stepped forward. Despite her fear, she stood tall and spoke clearly. "Our people are facing extinction. A species called the Kethra, the hegemony, has declared war on the Galactic Accord. They outnumber us greatly. They will conquer our worlds, enslave our people, and destroy everything we have built. We came here hoping the stories were true. We came hoping to find humanity. Chen was quiet for a moment. She exchanged looks with the other humans around her. Soreth could not read their expressions. Human faces were strange to him, mobile in ways that Velith faces were not. "Come with me," Chen finally said. "There is much to discuss." She led them through the station. Soreth tried to memorize the route, but soon gave up. The station was too large, too complex. They passed hundreds of humans going about their work. Some stopped to stare at the Velith. Most simply nodded politely and continued on their way. They reached a room with a large table and many chairs. Chen gestured for them to sit. Other humans entered, some in military uniforms, others in civilian clothing. They arranged themselves around the table and looked at the Velith with keen interest. "Tell us everything," Chen said. "Tell us about this hegemony." So Yanala told them. She told them about the Kethra, insectoid creatures with hard shells and sharp mandibles. She told them about the hegemony's expansion, how they had conquered dozens of species over the centuries. She told them about the slave markets, where captured beings were sold like animals. She told them about the planets that had been stripped of resources and left as dead rocks. When she described the glassing of a refugee moon, how hegemony ships had bombarded a civilian settlement until nothing remained but melted stone, something changed in the room. The humans went very still. Their faces hardened. Soreth saw Chen's hands curl into fists on the table. "How many?" Chen asked quietly. "How many what? How many died on that moon?" Yanala's voice trembled. 400,000. Mostly families, children. The silence that followed was terrible. Soreth felt the temperature in the room drop, though he knew that was impossible. What he was feeling was not physical, cold. It was the cold radiating from the humans around him. A cold anger. A controlled fury. Chen stood up. "Come with me. There is something you need to see." She led them to a viewing platform near the top of the station. Great windows looked out into space. Below them, a planet turned slowly. A beautiful planet, blue and green and white, wrapped in swirling clouds. "Earth," Chen said. "Our home." Soreth stared at it. It was lovely. It looked peaceful. Then he looked up, and his breath caught in his throat. Ships. Thousands of ships. They filled the space around the planet in perfect formation. Some were small and fast-looking. Others were massive, bristling with weapons. And more ships were visible in the distance. Hundreds more. Perhaps thousands more. "We built these after the Great Silence," Chen said. Her voice was soft but carried clearly in the quiet room. 3,000 years ago, we were nearly destroyed. An empire came to our world and tried to exterminate us. They almost succeeded. Billions of our people died. Our civilization was nearly ended. She paused, looking out at the fleet. When we finally defeated them, we made a promise. Never again. Never again would we be caught weak. Never again would we be helpless while innocents suffered. So we built. We prepared. We waited. Waited for what? Yanala asked. Chen turned to look at her. Her eyes were hard as stone. For someone to need us. She touched a control on the wall. A communication panel lit up. She spoke into it, and her voice carried to every ship in that vast fleet. "All ships. Condition yellow. Prepare for potential combat deployment. It seems someone out there needs reminding why humanity survived its homeworld." Across the fleet, lights began to flicker on. Engines started to warm. Crews moved to their stations. The great sleeping giant that was humanity's military was beginning to wake. Soreth felt tears running down his face. He did not bother to wipe them away. For the first time since the war began, he felt something he had almost forgotten. Hope. Yanala stepped closer to Chen. "Why?" she asked. "Why would you help us? You do not know us. We are strangers." Chen smiled, but it was a different smile now. Sad and fierce at the same time. 3,000 years ago, when our world was burning, we wished desperately for someone to help us. No one came. We saved ourselves, but we never forgot that loneliness, that despair. She put her hand on Yanala's shoulder. The touch was warm, gentle. "We will not let anyone else feel what we felt. You came to us asking for help. You found it. The hegemony wants war with the Accord. They will get war with humanity instead." She looked out at the fleet again. Her voice dropped low. "And I promise you, Ambassador, they are not ready for what that means." The human delegation arrived at Waypoint Terminus 3 days after Yanala's message reached the Accord Council, Ambassador Yanala had warned them to expect something impressive. She had not prepared them for what they actually saw. The human ship emerged from hyperspace like a mountain appearing from fog. It was enormous. The station's sensors could barely measure it. Early estimates suggested it was over 40 kilometers long. Later measurements proved those estimates were too small. It was called the Remember, and it was just their diplomatic escort. Inside the Great Hall, the species of the Accord watched as the human delegation entered. They walked in formation, moving with a strange, fluid grace. Their leader was a tall, dark-skinned man in a formal uniform covered with medals. Admiral James Okonkwo, they had been told. Commander of humanity's combined fleet. He walked to the center of the room and stood before the assembled representatives. He did not bow. He did not kneel. He simply stood straight and looked at them with calm, steady eyes. "Thank you for receiving us," he said. His voice was deep and clear. "I understand you are facing a difficult situation. We are here to offer our assistance." High Commander Voreth stepped forward. The great bear-like thorax towered over the human, but somehow Okonkwo did not seem small. He met the commander's gaze without flinching. "We welcome any assistance," Voreth said carefully. "But we must ask, what do you want in return? No one offers help without expecting something." Okonkwo nodded as if he had expected the question. "A fair concern. Let me be clear. We ask for nothing. No territory. No resources. No payment. We offer a full military alliance with no conditions attached." Murmurs spread through the hall. The Tethkai representative, a crystalline being who communicated through patterns of light, flickered with skepticism. "That makes no logical sense," the Tethkai said, its translator device converting the light patterns to spoken words. "Self-interest is the foundation of all rational behavior. If you gain nothing, why would you risk your people in our war?" Okonkwo smiled slightly. It was a strange smile. Patient, almost sad. "Let me tell you about a human concept," he said. "We call it the village. In ancient times, humans lived in small groups. Villages. Everyone knew everyone. If a fire broke out, everyone helped fight it. If a child was in danger, every adult would protect them. It did not matter whose child it was. The village was one family." He paused, looking around the room. "As we grew, we kept that instinct. We expanded what village meant. First it was our tribe, then our nation, then our world. Now," he spread his hands, "now it is the galaxy. You are our neighbors. Your children are our children. The hegemony is burning your villages, and we do not stand by while villages burn." The hall was silent. The Tethkai's lights flickered in confusion. Such thinking did not fit their mathematical models of behavior. But Yanala understood. She had seen the look in Commander Chen's eyes when she described the dead refugees. That was not calculation. That was rage. Pure, righteous rage at injustice. Voreth spoke again. "We are grateful for your offer, truly. But, we must ask, are you strong enough? The hegemony has thousands of ships, millions of soldiers. They have conquered dozens of species. So have we," Okonkwo said quietly. "In our history, we fought many wars. Some were terrible beyond description. We learned from every one." He touched a device on his wrist, and a holographic display appeared. "This is our fleet strength. Combat-ready vessels only." The numbers appeared. The hall gasped. Even Voreth stepped back in shock. 12,000 warships, 3 million combat-trained soldiers. Weapons, systems that made Accord technology look like children's toys. "We have been preparing for 3,000 years," Okonkwo said. "We hoped we would never need this fleet. We are sorry that hope was wrong." Far away, in the heart of hegemony space, Supreme Commander Kethvak received the intelligence report about the human arrival. He sat in his command throne, surrounded by his advisors, and listened to their analysis. "The humans are real," his intelligence chief reported. "They have emerged from the dead zone with a significant military force. They have allied with the Accord." Kethvak clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. "How significant?" "Several thousand vessels. Primitive design, possibly. They have been isolated for millennia. Their technology is likely outdated." Kethvak waved a limb dismissively. "Then they are no threat. The Deathworlder legends are exaggerated. No species can be as dangerous as the old stories suggest. It is biologically impossible. His advisors agreed. The hegemony had conquered dozens of species. Some had been strong, some had been clever, all had fallen. What could one more species do? Even if they were somewhat more resilient than average. Accelerate the invasion, Kethvac ordered. I want the Accord crushed within 60 rotations. We will deal with these humans after we have eliminated their allies. His fleets moved. 100 warships jumped toward Velith Prime, the heart of the Velith civilization. It would be an easy conquest. The Velith were weak, fragile. Their world was poorly defended. Within days, Kethvac would add another slave species to his empire. The fleet emerged from hyperspace in the Velith system. Weapons charged, ready to begin the bombardment. They found 3 human ships waiting for them. Just 3. Small vessels, barely a kilometer long. Nothing compared to the massive hegemony fleet. The lead commander laughed when he saw them. Is this the best the mythical Deathworlders can offer? He sneered. 3 patrol ships? He opened a channel to demand their surrender. Before he could speak, a human voice came through. Female, calm, almost bored. Hegemony vessels. This is Captain Maria Santos of the Earth Defense Force frigate Defiance. You have entered protected space. Withdraw immediately or face annihilation. The hegemony commander laughed again. His fleet had 100 ships. The humans had 3. The math was simple. Human vessel, you are outnumbered. Surrender or be destroyed. There was a pause. Then the human spoke again. Her voice was different now. Harder. You misunderstand. I am not asking you to surrender. I am giving you one chance to run away. Another pause. You should take it. The hegemony commander snarled in fury at the insult. He gave the order to attack. His 100 ships surged forward, weapons firing. The 3 human frigates did not retreat. They did not try to escape. They accelerated directly into the hegemony fleet. And then the universe learned why humanity had spent 3,000 years preparing for war. The Battle of Velith Prime lasted 6 hours. When it was over, everything the galaxy believed about warfare had changed forever. The Accord observer ship hung at the edge of the system, recording everything. Ambassador Yanala watched from its bridge, unable to look away. What she saw was beyond anything in her experience. The 3 human frigates did not fight like Accord vessels. Accord tactics taught ships to maintain distance, to exchange careful fire, to withdraw when damaged. These tactics were logical. They minimized losses. They preserved resources. The humans fought differently. The frigate Defiance plunged directly into the center of the hegemony formation. Weapons fired from every angle, striking multiple ships at once. Enemy fire slammed into its hull, blasting away armor plates and destroying weapon systems. The ship kept fighting. Backup weapons activated. Secondary systems took over for destroyed primaries. The Defiance absorbed damage that would have destroyed any Accord vessel 10 times over, and it kept killing. The other 2 frigates, never again and remember them, swept around the flanks. They worked together like predators hunting in a pack. When one ship drew enemy fire, the other struck from behind. When a hegemony vessel tried to retreat, they cut off its escape. No mercy, no hesitation, but it was their tactics that truly shocked Yanala. The Never Again took heavy damage from a hegemony cruiser. Instead of withdrawing, it accelerated toward the cruiser. For a terrible moment, Yanala thought the humans were going to ram their enemy. Instead, at the last second, the frigate dropped behind a destroyed hegemony ship, using the wreckage as cover. From there, it fired directly into the cruiser's unshielded rear, destroying it instantly. The humans were using their enemies dead as shields. Another moment, the Defiance was cornered by 3 hegemony destroyers. Rather than fight all 3, Captain Santos ordered her crew to fire grappling cables into a crippled enemy vessel and swing it into the destroyer's formation. The destroyer's own weapons destroyed the crippled ship, and the explosion damaged all 3 attackers. The Defiance killed them while they were reeling from the blast. They fought with what Yanala could only call creative insanity. They improvised. They adapted. They turned every disadvantage into an advantage. When conventional tactics failed, they invented new ones on the spot. And they never stopped, never paused, never gave the enemy a moment to recover. After 4 hours, 40 hegemony ships were destroyed. The remaining 60 attempted to withdraw. The human frigates pursued, picking off stragglers, until reinforcements from the main human fleet arrived to finish the battle. But the space battle was not what truly broke the hegemony that day. The ground battle was worse. Before the fleet was destroyed, hegemony troops had landed on Velith Prime. 5,000 Kithra warriors touched down near the capital city. Their mission was to capture civilian centers, to take hostages, to force the Velith government to surrender. 200 human marines deployed in response. 200 against 5,000. The Kithra were confident. They were larger than humans, stronger, covered in natural armor. Their mandibles could cut through metal. Their reflexes were faster than any prey species they had encountered. 5,000 of them against 200 soft-skinned humans. It would be a slaughter. They were right. It was a slaughter. But not the kind they expected. The Marines moved through the city like ghosts. They did not form neat lines or march in formation. They spread out, found cover, and became invisible. The Kethra searched for them and found only death. A warrior would turn a corner and fall dead, shot through the eye from a rooftop 3 blocks away. A squad would enter a building and never come out. Traps appeared everywhere, explosives hidden in doorways, pits covered with debris, buildings rigged to collapse on anyone who entered. The Kethra had never fought anything like this. Their previous conquests had been simple. Other species either surrendered or fought in predictable ways. These humans did neither, and when forced into close combat, the humans were even more terrifying. Yanala watched footage from a Kethra soldier's recording device, recovered after the battle. It showed a single human marine, a small female, facing 3 Kethra warriors in a narrow alley. She should have died instantly. She was outmatched in every physical way. She killed all 3 of them in 4 seconds. She moved with brutal efficiency, ducking under a mandible strike, driving a knife into a throat joint, taking a fallen warrior's weapon and using it to kill the second, then simply beating the third to death with her bare hands when her weapons failed. At the end, she was covered in Kethra blood, wounded in several places, still standing, still fighting. But the moment that truly ended Kethra morale came near the end of the battle. A squad of warriors captured a group of Velith children who had been hiding in a school basement. 30 young ones, terrified, crying for their parents. The Kethra commander saw them as leverage. He would use them to force the humans to surrender. He broadcast his demands. Surrender or the children die. A single human walked toward their position. Sergeant Thomas Reed. He was not large for a human. He walked slowly, hands raised, appearing unarmed. The Kethra commander was confused. Was this human surrendering? Coming to negotiate? Reed stopped 20 meters from the Kethra line. He looked at the children huddled behind the warriors. And he spoke, not to the Kethra, but to the children. Little ones, he said gently. Close your eyes. Close your eyes and count to 10. Can you do that for me? The children, too scared to disobey, closed their eyes. They began to count. What happened next was too fast for the Kethra recording devices to capture clearly. Reed moved. There were sounds. Gunfire, blades, breaking shells, screaming that stopped quickly. When the children reached 10 and opened their eyes, every Kethra guard was dead. Reed stood among the bodies, bleeding from a dozen wounds. He was smiling at them. See? He said softly. Nothing to be afraid of. He collapsed a moment later. Medics saved his life, barely. The children were evacuated safely. The remaining Kethra forces surrendered within the hour. When Supreme Commander Kethvac received the battle reports, he felt an emotion his species rarely experienced. Fear. True fear. Withdraw all forces from accord space, he ordered. Fall back to defensive positions. His officers obeyed. The great hegemony war machine began to retreat, but then his communications officer approached with a new report. The human main fleet had just entered hegemony territory, not pursuing the retreating forces, not liberating conquered worlds. They were heading directly for the hegemony homeworld. Kethvac stared at the tactical display. The humans were not fighting a defensive war. They were not simply protecting the Accord. They were coming for him, and he had no idea how to stop them. The human armada emerged from hyperspace in the heart of hegemony territory like an iron fist punching through paper. Over 1,000 warships, the largest fleet humanity had ever deployed, arranged in perfect formation around the flagship. Remember, Admiral Okonkwo stood on the bridge, watching the hegemony homeworld grow larger on the view screen. Behind him, the bridge crew worked in calm silence. No panic, no fear. They had trained for this moment for generations. They were ready. "Open a channel," Okonkwo ordered. "All frequencies. I want everyone to hear this." The communications officer nodded. "Channel open, Admiral. You're broadcasting across the entire system." Okonkwo stepped forward. He did not speak to the hegemony military. He did not address Supreme Commander Kethvak. Instead, he spoke to the slaves. "This message is for every being held in chains by the hegemony, every species they have conquered, every person they have enslaved." His voice carried across the system, picked up by every receiver, heard by billions of oppressed souls. "My name is James Okonkwo. I am human. 3,000 years ago, my ancestors were nearly destroyed by tyrants like the Kethra. We survived, we rebuilt, and we made a promise. We would never stand by while others suffered as we had suffered." He paused, letting the words sink in. "Help is here. Rise up if you can. Hide if you cannot. But know this, your suffering ends today. The hegemony will fall. Your chains will break. We have not forgotten what it is to be prey, and we do not forgive those who prey upon the helpless." Across hegemony space, the message spread. Slave populations who had labored for generations under brutal masters heard it and felt something stir in their hearts. Hope, courage, rage. On factory worlds, workers began to sabotage equipment. On mining colonies, slaves overpowered their guards. On agricultural planets, uprising spread like wildfire. The hegemony's economy, built entirely on slave labor, began to collapse from within. Kethvak watched the reports flood in with growing horror. His empire was burning, his military was scattered, and the human fleet was approaching his homeworld with no sign of slowing down. He gathered every ship he could find. 2,000 vessels, the last strength of the hegemony, formed a defensive line around the home planet. It was twice the size of the human fleet. Surely, this would be enough. The battle began at dawn, planetary time. It was not a battle. It was a reckoning. Human ships pushed forward through fire that would have annihilated any other fleet. They took damage. They lost ships. But they did not stop. Could not be stopped. Each destroyed vessel was avenged by its companions. Each loss only seemed to make the survivors fight harder. Kethvak watched from his command center as his fleet crumbled. He saw human ships, burning, crippled, still firing their weapons until the very moment they exploded. He saw human crews refusing to abandon their posts, fighting to the last breath. He saw something he had never seen in any species the hegemony had conquered. He saw beings who simply refused to lose. By midday, the hegemony fleet was broken. Scattered survivors fled into deep space. Kethvak's generals urged him to evacuate, to escape, to fight another day. He refused. He would meet these humans himself. He would understand them before the end. Human Marines landed at his command center 2 hours later. They moved through his guards like wind through grass. When they reached his throne room, Kethvak sat waiting for them. Admiral Okonkwo entered with a squad of soldiers. He was not a young man, his hair gray at the temples, but he moved with the easy confidence of someone who had nothing left to fear. He stopped a few meters from Kethvak's throne and looked at the Supreme Commander with calm, measuring eyes. "It is over," Okonkwo said. "Your military is destroyed. Your slave populations have risen against you. The hegemony has fallen." Kethvak clicked his mandibles slowly. "You could destroy my world, burn it as we burned so many others. Why have you not?" "Because that is what you would have done," Okonkwo replied. "And we are not you." "I do not understand." Kethvak's voice was genuinely confused. "We are your enemies. We would have killed your people without mercy. Why do you show mercy to us?" Okonkwo was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with old pain. 3,000 years ago, we faced enemies who showed us no mercy. When we finally defeated them, we had a choice. We could become what they were. We could repay cruelty with cruelty. Some of my ancestors wanted that. They wanted vengeance. He shook his head. But we chose differently. We decided that victory means nothing if it destroys what we were fighting for. We fight like monsters, so that we do not have to become them. We use our violence to protect, not to dominate. That is what separates us from you." He turned to leave, then paused. "You will face justice for your crimes. The species you enslaved will judge you. But we will not exterminate your people. Your children will have the chance to be better than you were. Kethvak stared at him. You are a strange species. Okonkwo smiled slightly. We know. 6 months later, the galaxy had changed forever. The hegemony was gone, replaced by a coalition of freed species rebuilding their worlds. The Galactic Accord reformed into a new galactic union, with humanity as founding members. Earth's long isolation was over. Ambassador Yanala visited Earth for the first time. She walked through a human city, surrounded by the chaos and energy of human life. Children ran through streets, laughing. Adults argued and hugged and worked and played. Everywhere she looked, she saw the contradictions that defined humanity. Monuments to terrible wars stood beside monuments to peace. Museums celebrating violence next to museums celebrating art. A species capable of such destruction, and yet they kept small animals as beloved companions. They formed deep bonds with strangers. They would die for people they had never met. She did not understand them. She suspected she never would. A small human child approached her. A little girl with dark hair and bright eyes. She held something in her hand. A flower, blue and purple, freshly picked. Welcome to Earth, the child said, offering the flower with a shy smile. Yanala took it carefully. The petals were soft. The smell was sweet. Thank you, she said. The child ran off to join her friends. Yanala watched her go, holding the flower gently against her chest. Historian Malthan had been right, she realized. The ancient stories about humans were not exaggerations. They were not myths or fairy tales. If anything, they were understatements. Humanity was real. They were terrifying. They were wonderful. They were kind and cruel and gentle and fierce, all at the same time. And now, for the first time in 3,000 years, they walked among the stars again. The galaxy would never be the same. Yanala looked up at the sky, where human ships patrolled peacefully alongside vessels from dozens of species. She thought about the long journey that had brought her here, the desperation that had driven her to seek out a myth, the hope that had been rewarded beyond her wildest dreams. She smiled and held the flower close. The humans had come, and everything was going to be all right.